Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I hope you're enjoying this morning, afternoon, evening, whenever you're happening to listen to this. This is Kofi and Mark from London, and I've got
Mark from Scotland, Glasgow.
Yeah, we threatened everyone that we were going to do this, and we've somehow managed to do it.
I'm actually feared of how this is going to go, you know that?
Well, they don't know what to expect, just a relatively quiet Londoner. Relatively quiet guy from Scotland.
Well, that'll be debatable afterwards.
What's the worst that could happen?
Don't say that.
Oh man, oh dear. Well, we might as well do some quick intros while we're here, just for the benefit of those who have no idea who we are.
Yep, absolutely.
So I'm Kofi and Mark, 25 years old, live in London, England, for now. More on that later.
Yep.
Day job, I work for an insurance company doing marketing, and when I'm not doing that, fancy myself as a bit of a preacher and teacher, but we'll see how that goes. Mark?
So I am Mark Stevenson, 25 as well, and I live in Paisley, which is just outside Glasgow. Get your Google Maps out, guys, if you don't know where it is. And my day job, well, I don't really call it a day. It's not really a day job, is it? It's kind of I pastor a church in Paisley called Glenburn Baptist Church. I have been working there for I'm trying to think. I've been a member. I've been going since I was 15. Became assistant pastor when I was 23, and I'm now the lead pastor at the moment. So that's what I do.
So basically, you took over the church.
The angry Scotsman just decided, nah, away with the pastor. I don't like him anymore. Nah, our old pastor was American, so he'd been there for 20 years. He planted the church, and just circumstances meant that he had to go back to America. It wasn't in the plan, it wasn't what we wanted, but it had to happen, and so I've ended up being the pastor for the meantime.
Awesome.
So yeah, that's where I am at the moment, and it's all good.
Sweet. So, I got to ask, how did you? So you said that you've been going to church since you were young.
Yep.
How do you go from attending the church as a kid to sort of becoming the pastor of the church?
A lot of people ask that because it's literally in a 10-year space of time from first attending the church to being the pastor of the church. Well, I became a Christian. I think put my faith in Christ. God saved me graciously at the age of 17. I was just about to turn 18 a couple of months after, and I just went straight from there, literally from conversion. Well, started going to the church when I was 15, to the youth clubs and stuff like that they ran. And my best mate, Craig, he's the one that invited me along. I always walked to school with him and things like that, so he was my best friend. And he invited me along, and it just kind of went from there. I don't know how I got... The ministry thing was a bit weird. It was a bit strange. You'll remember we went down to Cardiff for the Acts 20 conference, and after that conference, that was like the major call for ministry, believe it or not, on the 8-hour drive back up the road. I had a bit of silence, thankfully, when the two girls were sleeping, rather than all the chat when we were with some of our friends. And so just after that conference, I mean, I'd been thinking about it for a while. I'd done a degree. I'd in the middle of doing my sports degree at university, and I was heavily involved with the church, and it was just strange how it happened. I served in the church. I led worship. I worked on the sound desk, and I was a trustee on the church board at age 19. Our pastor was very good at getting the youth involved and wanting them to find out how a church ran in the background, and I really appreciated that. And I work the same, because I think it's great for young people to understand how a church works, not just on a Sunday, but throughout, finances and problems that come up, maintenance, all these kind of things. But yeah, after that, I went to the Acts 29 conference where Matt Chandler was preaching, and it was just through hearing how all the work was happening through Europe with Acts 29 and things like that made me think, actually, there's maybe more to this than just serving in the church, 1 day a week kind of thing. And I spoke to my pastor about it, and the first thing he said when I said to him, I think I'm feeling the call into ministry, and the first thing he said to me was, was that I knew you'd get there in the end. I was like, boom, mic drop. Here we go. So straight from that, he managed to get me a long distance theology course through Liberty University in the States. I think they're based in Pennsylvania. My pastor and his son had both graduated from there previously, and because I was in the middle of doing a degree, I wanted to finish doing the degree I had because I'd worked so hard at it for a good number of years. So there was 1 year where I was doing my theology degree, I was doing my sports degree at the same time, and I had working as part-time as the assistant pastor to get the practical experience of working in a church, but also working another part-time job that I had for keeping myself financially afloat. So that year to start with was very, very busy. I think I had not even a day off during the week, and it was just hard work, but we got there in the end. So I was I was ordained as a full-time assistant pastor after I completed my theology studies, and I was full-time assistant pastor for a year, for 2 years, I think it was, and then all of a sudden our pastor had to leave due to various circumstances. It was nothing bad, it was just things over in the States that he had to go back for, and therefore it just kind of left me in charge. We're kind of in a state of transition at the moment as a church. And so at the moment I'm the lead pastor of the church. Whether that's for the long term, I don't know where that leads. I'm going to see where God leads in that. But yeah, so that was like a 10-year gap between 15, started going along as a youth club, and now I'm 25, leading the church now. So it's going well. I'm enjoying it, and I just pray that God continues to bless the work there, whether I'm there in the long term or not.
Oh.
Yeah.
Awesome. I've got to say, that line from your pastor is absolutely hilarious.
I know. I just kind of looked at him and I thought, "Oh, you knew you." I was like, I almost called him something. I was like, "Oh, you knew, didn't you?"
Oh dear. Well, pastors are known to have a sixth sense for that sort of thing. So,
and it was confirmed through our leadership as well, and just through prayer and the unity of the Spirit was very clear. So God works everything out. If it's His will, He puts everything into place, and that He has done. So I'm glad to have followed after His will, and may it continue. So yeah.
Awesome.
What about yourself then, Kofi? What's your situation at the moment? Where have you came from, kind of background, and to where you are now, kind of thing?
Wow, you really want to cram that into one podcast? Okay, let's see how much of that we can do simply. So became a Christian at 14. Grew up in a Christian family, actually. My dad is a pastor. My mom is a teaching assistant working with kids who have special educational needs. She will tell you that it's the greatest job in the world. Seeing how happy it makes her, I wouldn't be inclined to disagree. But yeah, so grew up with two parents who were very actively involved in very different ways, but both very actively involved in our growing up. And the big thing that they instilled in us was we are Christians. Like, not... Yeah, you need to become Christians. Like, no, you were born into a Christian family. You are Christians.
Yeah.
So, growing up, initially, my dad wasn't a pastor. He was just a worker in the church, but he was a very active worker in the church, and so he would drag us off to church at every opportunity, which at some points meant we were in church up to 5 nights a week. When you're young, it's like, why are you doing this to us? And I look back and I still ask, why are you doing this? But that means we were in church all the time, and as my dad sort of rose the ranks, so to speak. Oh, by the way, somewhere in that journey, we moved to Germany. And while we were moving to Germany, my dad was asked to plant a church alongside his regular job. And he kind of ignored that for a while. Yeah. And then sort of door of opportunity opened, and he decided to just take it, and so ended up planting a church in Frankfurt where we were then living. And before I knew it, I was now a pastor's kid. And
good old PK, as they call it.
And it's weird being a pastor's kid because there's sort of one of 3 ways you go with that.
Right.
You either just kind of go completely off the rails and don't care,
Yep.
or, and this is sort of broadly generalized,
Yeah,
it's always the case, but you either just completely go off the rails and not care, or you just kind of play the role, so to speak. You know, you don't really know what you think about all this, but you know, resistance is kind of futile, so you just kind of just muddle your way through it, and you know all the right things to say. Yeah, exactly. And then you've got the folks who actually believed it, took it seriously.
Yeah.
And I was never the go off the rails type. My mom said it to this day. I'm the most compliant of her 4 children.
That's a compliment.
Yeah. I don't know whether that's just because I'm weak, which some people have said. I don't know about that, but
I don't know. I wouldn't mess with you, mate. No, to be honest.
Thank you. I guess. Anyway, I don't know whether it's just that or I just knew it's a lot easier if you just agree.
Yeah.
But I was very much in that sort of middle of the road. I don't know what I think about all this stuff, but hey, as long as I say please and thank you to everyone and I don't get my dad in trouble, doesn't really matter. So, you know, you kind of get dragged along to church all the time and with that. But after a while, you start thinking, oh, I actually am a Christian because I go to church. I read the Bible. We have family worship at home and stuff. Of course I'm a Christian. But got to secondary school, which for our non-English listeners, secondary school starts at about age 11.
Yeah.
So, got to secondary school, and I went to an all-boys school, 1,000 boys in the school.
Oof.
Which
testosterone through the roof.
Oh, you're telling me, mate. And so you kind of go from, you know, a nice small primary school where everyone sort of got on to this school where 1,000 boys are basically trying to prove themselves.
Yeah.
And you're still the compliant one.
Yeah.
And so everyone starts trying it on with you, and as a result, you know, there was a period where I was bullied quite heavily, and bullying first turned to sort of being depressed about it. Being depressed then turned to being frustrated about it. Being frustrated turned to full-on bad temper. So it got to a point where I was getting into fights at school. I was on the verge of actually being kicked out by the age of 14. Wow. Not because I wasn't good at school. Yeah. Actually, I wouldn't say straight A student, but...
You're an academic.
Yeah, I was academic. So that was never a problem, but where the problem was the fact that you just couldn't leave me in the classroom with anyone. You know, people keep trying it. I keep demonstrating why they shouldn't have tried it. To put it mildly. And you know that becomes a recurring cycle. So you get excluded from school, then get longer exclusions, and then you come back and it's okay for a while, and then it picks up again. You're excluded again, and it was starting to drive my parents crazy. Yeah. And then the worst thing that could have happened, which was that bad temper started going to church. So now the kids at church start trying me all the time. Yeah. And I keep letting them have it. And so now it starts to get around, oh, pastor's son, he's got a bit of a temper on him. Which is now my dad's worst nightmare because he takes his ministry very seriously, and here I am basically jeopardizing it. Yeah. Into that mix, God sends a Sunday school teacher who basically preaches the gospel to me for the first time. Now, bear in mind, I'm 14. I've grown up in church, and that's the first time I've heard it.
That's insane.
Which it is. But now I get told that's actually quite the norm in some places, sadly. But anyway, preaches the gospel to me, and for the first time, I'm confronted with it. At first, I want to say, do you know who I am? Like, again, I just betrayed how I understood the church worked. Like, you work for my dad. What do you mean I'm not Christian? But then I went and sort of stopped and started thinking through it, and I started realizing, oh, I'm not a Christian. Okay. That just started the course of me asking this Sunday school teacher, her name was Daphne, loads of questions. Auntie Daphne, explain this. But, okay, I understand what you're saying, but... And I've always been a very analytical person, even as a kid. And so, like, I'm thinking from, like, every possible angle. Okay, but what about this? But what about this? But what about this? And, you know, she was just patient with me, and it was around that period that God just literally grabbed hold of me and became a Christian at 14, and now went from being a sort of middle-of-the-road kid to the one who was super passionate about it because I finally got it as I thought.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I didn't know any better as a kid. The church I grew up in was actually really big into the whole prosperity thing.
Yeah.
And so here I am, sort of throwing myself. I was like, well, what does Dad do all the time? Oh, Dad watches Christian TV. So I start watching Christian TV. Didn't particularly like everyone on there. Just styles are so different. Just think, not that guy. But you start latching onto one or two. My big guy was Creflo Dollar, if you can believe it. Yeah, of all the guys.
Oh man, he threatened to come to Scotland, and Angwig told him to beat it.
Pause. What happened with that? Did he?
I can't. I think. Oh, it might have been like a vineyard church or something. He did come, but like the moderator of the Free Church of Scotland just came out and wrote.
I saw that. Yeah.
I wrote that. But I think the majority of evangelical Christians in Scotland just told him to take a hike, basically, and so I think he did come, but then the church that he was invited to got a lot of pressure to say, why are they inviting somebody like this into the country if they claim to be a gospel preaching church and things like that. So yeah, us Scots took a broad stance on it, and basically the majority of us told him to beat it. But I think he did come, but I think he left in quite a hurry.
Nice. Anyway, so back to the story. Creflo was one of my favorite guys. I can still do a really good impression of Creflo, which I won't do for this podcast. But I started listening to that and just kind of threw myself headlong into it. To cut a very long story short, came to see that wasn't biblical.
Yeah.
Eventually stopped watching him on TV. Then realized, hold on, there's no difference between what he says on TV and what my dad preaches.
Yeah.
So I was like, and I'm about 18 at this point. So I was like, okay, we've got a problem here. And for a while, I tried to just ride it out, and I kept going to church, and I was involved in various ministries at church and stuff. But eventually, it got to a point where I was like, I need to leave.
Aye.
And at 18, I left my dad's church, which
I can imagine that would be quite difficult.
Yeah, but it was difficult at the time. I think to this day, it's still a very tense relationship because of that. But I left.
Yep.
And initially, I was at the Metropolitan Tabernacle, so Uncle Charlie's church, as I like to call it.
Yeah.
Was up there for 4 years, and then 4 years ago, transferred membership from there to the church I go to now, Grace Life London. So we're part of what's called the Fellowship of Independent Evangelical Churches, the FIEC.
Yep. I'm a pastor with them. I'm a pastor's part of the pastors network with them.
There you go. But yeah, we're just a church plant. We turned 5 in January, and when I got there, it was a lot smaller than it is now. So I've kind of just grown with it.
Aye.
And yeah, that's been just such an encouragement and such a blessing. And along the way, got involved in teaching at the church. First off, just teaching Sunday school. And I've been teaching before that, doing like Bible studies and stuff. But, this was like the first time I was doing it sort of under the wing of a church, so to speak.
Aye.
And so started off teaching Sunday school with the kids, which I still do and absolutely love. And then got asked to take some of our, what we call Foundations of Faith classes, which is sort of the bulk of the teaching I do these days. But on top of that, occasionally do some preaching at church and other churches as well. So yeah, that's what I've been up to. And in the midst of all that busyness, met this American girl about a year ago.
That was my next question.
Yeah, well,
what's your current life situation and what's your kind of future plan?
So like I said, met this amazing American girl called Laura. And yeah, that was a year ago this month, if you can believe it. Met her a year ago, and if you told me a year ago that I would be getting married to that girl, I would have said, you are mad. Well, yeah, that's what's happening.
God works in mysterious ways.
Got engaged a month ago and making plans to move over to the States next year.
Ooh,
so, that's my current life situation.
How you feeling about moving to the States?
I'm excited about it. Again, you don't know what fully to expect. This will be the first time I've moved to a country on my own.
Yeah, aye.
So that's going to be interesting. But yeah, I'm excited. Everyone keeps asking, "Are you nervous? Are you worried?" I'm like, nah. And I'm very much the worrying type. But this is the first decision I've made in a very long time where I'm genuinely not worried about it.
Aye,
like,
and I think that's quite good, because I mean, you go over to the conferences like the Shepherd's Conference and things like that, don't you? And how do you think you'll fit into the American culture compared to, obviously, it's a lot different from over here, especially even the Christian culture as well?
I kind of see that going one of two ways. Either I just get assimilated, and I will admit, the one recurring nightmare I have is that I lose my English accent. I can't do it. No, I love my accent, please. No. But either I just get assimilated, or I'm just going to stick out like a sore thumb with my Londoner ways. But I'm sure we'll figure. I mean, Alistair Begg's been over there for years, and he's just fine. So
But his accent disappeared.
I don't know about that.
I've listened to him preach, and well, I don't know if it's just because I'm broad Scottish and everything, but ever since he moved over, I think his accent's just, it's not, I wouldn't class it as Scottish, I'd class it a very, very light accent, I think.
Really?
Yeah, well, that's just me though. I think that's just because I'm ingrained in broad Scottish, so anything outside that is not. To Americans, it probably does sound Scottish as well, but
I'm a Londoner, and it sounds Scottish to me.
Well, that's it. I mean, I just don't. If I ever come to visit you, don't turn into that guy who's got a cowboy hat on and a shotgun telling me to get off your land.
But that sounds like so much fun.
Because I will not move.
That's the thing. You guys are not known for your compliant nature in any way, shape, or form. Oh dear.
Oh, that sounds good. It sounds like you've got a lot to look forward to in the next few years or so.
Yeah. And excited to see where the Lord takes it. I mean, we've got some plans which we'll keep quiet for now. But just excited to see what the Lord does with that. And it's a happy decision. It's in a way it's a bittersweet one as well, because obviously I'd be leaving the church behind, and 5 years. By the time I leave, it'll be 5 years I've been there, and 5 years in one church is a really long time.
Yeah,
you've been serving there, and you've built relationships, and you're an active part of the fellowship there, and then to be leaving and starting up, that's going to be tough, but it's a new beginning as well, so I'm super excited about it.
It's the next chapter, isn't it?
Yep.
Oh, well, that sounds good. I guess for myself, I don't actually know. It's been quite a turbulent kind of last. What's this, July? It's probably been a bit turbulent year or so, because it was I run a camp down in Wales every year, a Christian sports camp, and I help lead that, and I speak at that and do coaching with the sports and stuff like that. And it was when I came back from that camp after a week's of camp, getting up early, going to bed late, absolutely knackered, travelling, all that kind of stuff. And so I went round to see my pastor on the Monday morning. I thought, Monday's usually not doing much. I'll go around and see him just to try and catch up after camp. And so he says, hello, how you doing, have a coffee, whatever. And then he's like, sit down, we need to talk. And I'm thinking to myself, what have I done in the last week? I've not even been near the church, because at this time I'm the assistant pastor mind, and I'm just thinking, have I done something? Have I like, you know what I mean? I'm like, it's just, when somebody tells you we need to talk, I'm like, oh, no. And then he went on to explain how him and his wife were having to move back to America, just for various circumstances and reasons. And he was saying, he'd be gone by Christmas, so to speak. So that was August, September, October, November, December, 4 months notice, which was fine, it was plenty of notice. But it was just a bit of a shock, because obviously I was learning from him, he was my mentor and things like that. And I'd only really been full-time for just coming up 2 years as the assistant pastor. I'd been part-time, obviously, while doing my degree. And so that was a big one. And so he left literally, I think it was Boxing Day or something, or maybe New Year, that he went back to the States. And that was it. And it was just, it was just kind of, the leadership, we weren't sure what to do or what was happening. There was a bit of miscommunication, things like that. So it ended up just being that they kept me on as the pastor, and that's where we're at. Officially, we have a vacancy in our church for a lead pastor. However, we're still trying to decide what we do with that. Because in a perfect world, we're a small independent church. We're maybe 15 congregation. So obviously, financially, we need to be savvy with how we steward the Lord's money and things like that. And financially, we can afford one full-time staff member, pastor or whatever. And at the moment, that's me. The thing is, when my pastor was working in the church, we were getting money in from America as well, from one of his home church, which is a big church in Ohio, and obviously we don't have that coming in anymore, so we're self-sufficient. So I mean, this is the thing at the moment. So I'm leading the church at the moment. I'm only 25. Ideally in a perfect world, I would have had a good couple of more years under his, mentor, being mentored by him, and just getting to grips with the whole, church ministry culture and the things we need to do. And obviously he had to leave. So we're at this stage where I can either put my name forward to be the pastor, or do we get somebody completely else in? And that's the decision we need to make. Or can we do something where we have myself and somebody else in as well? And that's public knowledge. I'm not saying anything that's confidential. That's public knowledge anyway. So that's where we're at the moment. So at the moment we're having a big meeting in August to kind of go over it all and decide what we want to do. But yeah, so we're just praying about that at the moment and seeing what happens. Whether I stay at the church or not, I don't know. Whether I move on somewhere else, I don't know. Again, God's not put anything in my life to say go here or go there at the moment. But you never know, a year from now, you never know what's going to happen. So at the moment I'm just working away, just preaching, teaching, reaching out to the community and the local community around, just being a light to them. And so that's where I'm at the moment. So we're kind of up in the air. I'm up in the air in terms of what my long-term future is. So that's my situation at the moment. But at the moment, I'm pastoring the church here in Paisley.
Awesome.
So yeah.
Well, not to put you on the spot, but for everyone who's listening, how can we be praying for you guys? Obviously, that's a massive one. Just what the future looks like. But what else can we be praying for you?
Pray for us that we get our youth work back when I first joined the church. We had a lot of kids. We had 40 to 50 kids on a Tuesday night youth club, and that was like 10, between 8 and 10 years ago. And that's another thing to pray for. A lot of those kids in the area where our church is. It's a suburban area. It's housing schemes and things like that. And the roundabout area, the immediate area around the church is. There's a good bit of drugs going on and dodgy things like that. But just like any area, there's always the good bits and the not so nice bits. But a lot of those kids have moved on, or just like the parents have moved. We have some military families, so they're moving as well all the time. So we're just trying to work at getting into the local primary schools and high schools. Just to get in there and build relationships up. Obviously, you have to take these things slow. If you build relationships up with the people to start with, then obviously in the long term you might have gospel opportunities to present the gospel. So pray for that. Pray for our youth, that we would get our youth, that we'd be able to reach the kids in the local area. Obviously we want to reach everyone in the local area, but specifically the kids, because these kids are growing up in broken homes, single parents and sometimes even no parents, and it's just it's sad to see, and we do as a church have a heart for them. So yeah, that would probably be the other main thing to pray for, is our youth work, and that we can get that up and running back to where it used to be.
All right.
So yeah, what about yourself? Is there anything personal in your church we can be praying for you guys?
Oh, just the usual, things that happen in the, we're still classified as a church plant, even though it's been 5 years.
Yeah.
Part of that is financial, just
of course.
We're not quite in a place where we're financially independent, and we do have a lot of support from outside the church, which we're incredibly thankful for.
Absolutely.
But we're very keenly aware that we're a church in the heart of central London. Planting a church in London is not a small endeavour. And in a lot of ways, God's been good to us in that small things, like, for example, we don't pay rent for the building that we use. That's a building which, given the part of central London we're in, that's a miracle. It's like,
what part of London is it your church is in again?
So we are in what's called the Clerkenwell area.
Okay.
Just to give you some perspective, was like there are houses up the road from us which go for millions of pounds. Right. Okay. So it's that kind of area.
That kind of area.
To be fair, most of central London is that kind of area.
Yeah. Aye.
But in God's providence, we have this old chapel which we meet in, and there's good things about the building, not so good things, like ridiculously hard to use. The struggle
Down
is
with
so
the
real.
pews.
Yeah, the struggle is so real with those pews. But no, praise God, it does what it needs to, and we're growing church, but we've not grown to the point where we've outgrown the building, thankfully.
Yeah.
And so that's great. But just financial challenges and just the usual strain of ministry. I mean, we're in a fortunate position in that we've got 3 pastors. Unfortunately, one is ill at the moment. His name's Ross. So those of you who are listening, please pray for Ross and his family as he sort of copes with that. Our other 2 pastors, they're doing a lot, not just in terms of preaching. So one preaches our Wednesday night Bible study, the other one does Sundays. On top of that, a lot of training going on, a lot of counseling going on. Our sort of main teaching pastor, Tom, is doing a doctorate as well. So that will tire you. I can see it.
Oh, that'll be busy. Aye.
Yeah. So just praise for us in that, balancing all of that and still being able to, effectively do ministry. And, we praise God, we've had a real good impact in terms of evangelism.
That's good.
So very active evangelism teams who go out on Friday evenings, and our church meets at 4 p.m., which is very cool, I might add.
Yeah.
Lots of lions. But some folks decide not to have a lion and will go and do evangelism on Sunday mornings. So quite a good size team go out for that. So just press for that as well. We have an evangelistic website that we've created with tons of video content. So some folks' testimonies are on there, including myself. We've got now like really cool graphical stuff going on as well, which is really awesome. So just press for that. It's called London Gap, and just praying that all those sort of avenues of ministry, God gives fruit to those as we're working hard. So
absolutely,
those would be big things to pray for us.
Oh well, definitely. I'm sure we'll all be praying for you, and that's good. It's good to hear about the evangelism side of things as well. That you've got set things to reach the community with and reach London with. I think that's great.
Yeah.
So the next topic that we were discussing is the one that you mentioned today.
Yeah, I think at this point I should raise my disclaimer that most of the following views are the views of Kofi and him alone, do not reflect the views of Mark Stevenson, Glenburn Baptist Church, or anybody else, just in case he gets in trouble.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, I like him not to lose his job if I say something controversial, so...
Yeah, this was all Kofi's idea. I'm innocent in this.
Oh dear.
So you may as well introduce the topic and give us a bit of a... I'll jump in with it as well, but
sure.
Yeah.
So I was just thinking, still kind of relevant for me. One thing I've always noticed that, particularly as someone who's been thinking of ministries and very vocal about that, as a single guy in the church, it's a weird place to be when you're thinking of ministry and you're a single guy. I don't know if I can describe it. I don't know if you've seen one of those pictures where it's like job title and it's like what my mom thinks, what people think.
Yeah.
Have you seen those?
Yeah.
I'd love to make one for like single guy involved in ministry, because you get some folks who just think like lazy guy needs to go do something with his life. Preferably, go ask a girl out, lazy guy. That'll be like one panel.
Yeah.
And then you got the folks who just think that, oh, he's single, he must have like ladies flocking to him because he's a guy in ministry. And it's like, then there's the panel like, what it really looks like. I don't know what you put there. And I raised that topic just because I think sometimes, and I don't think this would apply so much to sort of within our own age group as such.
Aye.
But definitely I think older Christians sometimes, and I've noticed it, I've had people tell me, I think there's this sort of assumption almost that, if you're single, there's like, almost sort of something's wrong with you, and you're kind of using ministry to cover the fact there's something wrong with you. And it's like, no, there isn't something wrong with me. I'm busy serving the Lord, making the most of this time that I have, using the opportunities the Lord provides. I get people who joke with me all the time, like, oh, you're about to get married, I guess you're not going to travel as much. I was like, maybe, but...
It's like getting married is like leveling up, you know what I mean?
Thank you. It's like, well, actually, I've had a great life as a single guy. I mean, whenever I feel like it, I buy a plane ticket, pack a bag, and I go traveling places.
Exactly.
Conferences, but I get to do that. I've got to do some really cool things, and I get to serve in church, and that's a blessing. And my pastor could call me at like 1 a.m.
Yeah.
Not that he's ever done that, but
no.
He could call me at 1 a.m. and say, "You down to preach on Sunday?" I'd be like, "Yeah, I'll talk to you in the morning." Go back to
back to her dad.
There's a certain freedom that gives you, which it's a blessing. And like you said, the idea of almost as though like you are incomplete. Despite the fact you're serving in ministry, sometimes you're serving people who are much older than you, and they're coming up to you and saying, "Oh, that was a blessing, thank you so much." But there's still the sort of subtle feeling that he hasn't quite arrived yet, And it's like, no, no one's arrived for a start, so you can forget that. But even so, no, I'm growing and maturing as the Lord gives opportunities, and I don't know. It just kind of bugs me that that's the sort of attitude. Maybe it's different up north, but sometimes I get that feeling down here, and I know I'm not alone elsewhere. I've had people sort of display that sentiment. So, any thoughts?
Aye. No, like, I mean, personally for our church, the people in our church are not like that. They are, they don't actually, I guess just from what hearing about, other people online have said, like that kind of, people think you're incomplete and things like that. But I mean, our church, I can only speak for the people in my church, and they don't actually get involved. They don't actually ask those kind of questions. Like, they know that I'm a single pastor, but that doesn't bother them. That's fine. There's one guy in our church who I wish a lot of other, just after hearing some horror stories from other churches about, putting guys down because maybe they're not married or things like that. There's one guy in our church, I won't name him, but he's one of our leadership, and he does it the right way. Like, he'll take me aside and just ask, how's things going in your life, and he will say, he will say, but in the nicest way, is there a lady in your life or anything like that? And he'll say in all honesty, I'm praying for you. If that's something that the Lord wants, then He'll give it to you. He's not saying it as something that you need, but He's saying He knows that it would be beneficial, especially for somebody as a pastor. He says, I know that it would be beneficial for you to have a wife. However, God's timing's perfect. So, I just want to let you know I'm praying for you. And if it happens, it happens. And I think if a lot more guys, especially older guys in the church, were like that with younger guys, around the world, I think guys wouldn't be putting themselves down as much, in that kind of sense, if that makes any sense. But yeah, in our church, there's not that culture, which I'm thankful for, and I'm keen to make it sure that way. And as you said, I'm a single guy as well at the moment, and I'm using the time wisely to, just serve the Lord, and it's allowing me to do things, it's allowing me to pastor the church at the moment and not have to worry about, a family or kids or a wife or anything like that. And hopefully, I hope that comes sometime, and whatever, but, that's a desire of mine. But at the moment, it's all about stewarding your time wise, as you said. As long as you're not that guy just sitting around doing nothing, as long, God's given you that time for a reason, and that time should be used wisely to serve Him and glorify Him. And God is faithful. He rewards us. He blesses us for remaining faithful and being obedient to Him. And He'll give us what we need in His perfect timing. And I think that's just the kind of the main message. But yeah, no, it's the whole culture that I've seen in other places and other churches. We do need to get away from it. Seeing marriage as leveling up, or if you get married, that's you complete. You're where you should be. That's not right. That's not right at all. And let's just it's the same for women as well. I don't want to miss out the women in the church get girls get this in the church all the time as well. Why aren't you married? Why aren't you there's a godly man in the church, or there's a guy in the church going, go speak to him, get him to ask you out, things like that. And it's like, you don't just ask anyone out. You don't just because he's a Christian guy does not mean that you're compatible in any way, shape or form. It's a lot more complicated than that. But yeah, so to our sisters in Christ as well, let's be fair to them and just treat them as equals. That it's a martial status. It doesn't make us any more or less better in God's eyes, and that's the way we should see it.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's why we have a pastor on the call. Took the words right out of my mouth. Yeah, I mean, I have to, and I'm now having to tell people this a lot, just that, yeah, it doesn't make you any better if, you're married, or you're engaged, or you're single, or it's complicated. I'm not sure what complicated would look like, but I don't know. It doesn't make you any better in God's eyes. That's not where your standing is. And I think, not to entirely fault sort of the older generation of folks who ask those kind of questions, because, most of them mean well. They're not doing it out of a, desire just to, well, okay, let me backpedal on that. Yeah. Some people are doing it out of a desire to be nosy or meddling. There's some folks
they just do it indirectly, don't they?
Yeah. And there are some folks, I don't know, the motives are a bit unclear there. But, at the same time, it does kind of give the sense as though, as a believer, you're sort of incomplete as a believer. And so it's like, but hold on, any sort of problems that you have before getting married, like, being married isn't going to magically fix those.
No, absolutely.
If anything, this should be the time where you're actually trying to work on those now.
Yep.
With God's help.
Because you add a second person into that, you add a second sinner into that, things are going to get messy.
Very messy. Yeah. But like I said, you took the words right out of my mouth. I got to add on that one, which is kind of rare. Yeah.
That's why I'm a pastor, eh?
Yep.
No, it's a good topic to discuss, and I just again, we just need to make sure we're raising godly men and women, and God will sort it all out. God will put together for His good plan, But no, I think I guess that's all I've really got to say on the topics. I said in my church personally, I've not had to deal with it in the negative sense, which is good, and I like to keep it that way. But I've heard so many other places and churches where it's just rife, where there's talking down to people, so to speak, because of their martial status, But we can just keep praying, and I'm sure everything will sort itself out.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll pick up the conversation in the next episode. We'll talk a little bit about books we were reading at the time, and a little bit about football along the way as well. Catch us on the next episode, and we'll see you soon. Thanks, guys.
I acknowledge my sin to you, and I did not cover my iniquity. There's nowhere to hide from your all-seeing eyes. You know everything, I can't tell you a lie. You know my own heart much better than I. You know when I sleep and you know when I rise. You know all the thoughts that go through my mind from morning to night, every moment of pride. Hey, I acknowledge my sin to you, and I did not cover my iniquity. You know what I've done, you know what I do, so I open my mouth and confess it to you, and you're making me new. It's your spirit at work to convict me of sin, so I know where to turn and I know where to run to your arms to be cleansed of my sin by the blood of your son. Hey, I acknowledge my sin, I know I can't kill it with a knife or a gun. It must be crucified on the cross with your son. Then I can know that it's finished and done. Then I can know that I'm truly forgiven and get to the business of living for you. And it's not for my glory, but only for you. And it speaks of your mercy, your love, and your truth. Give me the faith to believe what you say and to trust in your word when I'm tempted to stray, and to patiently wait for the day you return. I hate my sin, it burns, but the old will pass away. While I'm still here, you hear my prayer. Please wash my sins away. Oh Lord, release me from the snare. The old will pass away. While I'm still here, you hear my prayer. Please wash my sins away. Oh Lord, release me from the snare. Oh God, my sin is great, there's no escaping it. I hate my sin, but I still partake in it. I become numb to the touch from feeling it. I've learned the art and skill of concealing it. I might pretend to keep my composure, hoping never to disclose the truth that it exposes. And even though nobody around me knows it, God, you notice when I'm alone, it shows it. I do a good job doing good deeds. Look the right part, cause I say the right things. Trusting your word and what's best for me, but it seems that I still live in disbelief. I'll begin to better understand confession when I understand the weight of my sin and its effect, and how it's a direct reflection of my selfishness, and recognize your correct assessment. I don't have to hide behind my own pride, tear myself up from the guilt inside, cause I've been given everything